In this session, we'll talk about interface, styles and templates, points, and surfaces. To start with, we'll talk about the interface of Civil 3D. To my top left, there is the application menu, and within the application menu, we have these icons: new, open, save as, publish, print, drawing utilities. We have explained some of these things during the training, so I'll just have an overview of what we did then. Here is the quick access toolbar, and we have the tabs, and within each tab there's a ribbon, and within each ribbon there are panels. Now everything we have here is within palette panel, and everything that is here is within create ground data panel. You have the create design. For each of the panels, you could expand for some other functionalities. Okay, after that, we talked about the tool space, which is this icon here, where every element in Civil 3D has been carefully arranged. And within this tool space, there are 4 different tabs. There is a perspective tab, the settings tab, the survey tab, and the toolbox tab. But the perspective tab is strictly for design, and for settings, it's for making adjustments and settings regarding most of what we have here. And the survey is basically for our survey data, and this last tab here, it's for reporting. Then we talked about the status bar and some settings that we could make regarding the model space. Here is the model space. It's also called the drawing area, where most of what we do, we see the outcome. And lastly, we talked about the command line, where we could type in some commands, and also when you click on any of this command, you'd see the text of that command. So that's for the interface of the software. We also talked about the workspace and how we could make changes, how we could change Civil 3D workspace to basic AutoCAD workspace. Okay. Then we talked about styles and templates, and we explained that styles are ways by which we could make settings as to how our drawings or our elements are represented in the drawing area. And after all those styles must have been set, we could have the whole settings in a template, such that whenever we have any other project, we could take off from where we have left off. And to create templates, you right click and come to options. When you click on options, you go to files tab and move straight to template settings. Within this template settings, we could have a default template file, such that for every time we create a new file, a new drawing, or a new file, or a new project, it would open with the templates. Now, to change this template that is currently here, which is the default that came with the software, you click on browse and navigate to where your template is. To save a file as a template, all we have to do is to go for save as within the application menu and change the file type to DWT, AutoCAD drawing template. Then you save it like that. Remember that within this dialog box or this window, you could also dock the project you're currently working on. Like for instance, I could dock this CESE road within this panel, such that whenever I wish to navigate to the projects within the CSC root, all I have to do is come to this panel and click, then I would find everything here. Yeah. Okay. After that, we talked about styles, and within styles, we explained that there are two types. Number one being object style, which defines the geometry or the drawing itself, and the label style is the annotation appended to some of the drawings. Here we have a point, and this is the marker, which is the point style. I would like to call it the object style. It's a more global name. And here we have the label style. This EP here is the label style. Going to my tool space within the Prospector tab, we could make some changes regarding these point styles. For instance, I've created a point group, my name CSC. If we right click on it, you could go to properties and make changes with regards to the point style. To do that, click on this flyout and select edit if you'd like to edit the point style. If you'd like to create, you go for create new, and if you'd like to copy what you have before, you come to this copy current selection. We'll just make edits to the current selection because we have worked on it during our training session. This is just the recorded video. Okay, now within the information, you type in the information you like to attach to this point style. Within the marker, you could use basic AutoCAD points or a custom marker, or you could go for an AutoCAD block. For this point style, we selected this block, which is this drawing here. And to create this block, we just draw out the geometry or the drawing. When you make the drawing, you block it, and after blocking it, it should be listed within this panel. Then you could give it a size here, depending on what you want. And if you like to give it a rotation, you could type in the rotation angle here. Okay, when that is done, you could come to 3D geometry. Here you could select the elevation you like it to use. Currently you're using the point elevation, meaning that the marker that you're bringing in, or the point you're bringing in, at what elevation do you want it to be? Here you're using the point elevation, meaning that the points that the software brought in, that it imported, is what we're using. And if you don't want that, there is flatten points to elevation. Here you would like to type a particular elevation to it. Okay, then within the display, you could make some changes as to the marker and the label. And here is the summary of everything we have done. Then we click on OK. You have endorsed that every settings you've made should be locked in. The second style is the point label style. Remember, I called this one the object style. It's because we're currently working on points, that's why it's point style. So when we're working on alignment, it will now be alignment style. Now within these default styles, there is another style by the name label style, and this is what defines the annotations appended to the markers. To make changes to it, you right click or you click on this flyout and you either create, you copy, or you go for edit. You could give it a name and a proper description. The general tab, here you can select the text style you'd like to use. To create a text style, you could come to annotate up here, and when you click on this annotate, you'd find a panel that is strictly for text. There you could create a text style. during our lesson, we created a text file by the name Romans, where we use a font by the name Romans. And the visibility has been set to be true, and the layer that this label would be placed on is vnode text. We could also create a layer and put this label within that layer. Then we have the behavior orientation reference. We're referencing it to the objects, meaning the marker. And would there be a forced insertion? Now here we have the plan, readability bias, flip anchors with text. These are just more information about how this label would behave. For more information about most of these things, click on help. Okay, you could click on help here. Okay, it's coming up. When I click on help, you'll have more information about some of these things. Now within the layout tab, we have the component name. This would list everything that that the label is composed of. If you could remember very well, before we started this editing, within this point label style, there were some other ones that comprised of description, some northern and eastern value, some elevation. You could even have the whole of those 5 labels. I mean, the number, the eastern, the northern, the elevation, and the description. So you could make the editings here by adding a new text. Now, when you add a new text, you could give it a name, say description, or let me use elevation here. We already have description, elevation, and visibility true. You make the settings for this one. However, we're not using elevation, so I'll take elevation off, remaining just point description. Now this is the information or settings for this point description. The next tab is for drag states. That is when this label is not appended to where it has been anchored to. Remember, it has been anchored to the marker. Now when you click on the label and you drag it out, there'll be a leader attached to it. So here you make settings to the leader: the arrowhead style, the head size, the visibility, and the type. This is where you make the settings. And within summary, you'd find the information sets within the general layout and drag states tab. When you're done, you click on OK to lock in all your settings. Now within point groups, this is where you would add the points found in other point group. Take for instance, we have some other point group in this project. So when I check the box next to the point group, it brings in the points found in other groups. The raw description marking is basically to select some points that have a description to them. Within include tab, this is when you would like to include points based on the numbers or based on the elevations, based on the names, raw description or full description. You could also exclude points from the current point group, and you'd use the same description that you would have used for including points. Then we have some other tabs. This last point here, or this last tab here, summarizes all the settings that must have been made within each and every tab. When you click on OK, you lock in your settings. Now after that, your settings must have been effected on the screen. When you go back to tool space again, we could make changes to our surface. To make changes to surfaces, you'd right click on the surface, go for surface properties. Within the surface properties, you could change the name, change description, and also make changes to the surface style. To make changes to the surface style, click on this flyout and select either create new or create or copy current selection. I'd go for edit current selection. So here we could make changes as to the name and the description. Within the borders tab, you can make changes as to how the borders would be represented and if you want them to be shown on your screen. Contours controls how contours would be defined on screen, like the intervals, the legends, the depression, and in fact smoothing out our contours. The grid here defines if you'd like to attach a grid to your surface. And within this interval here, you could specify the distance of the interval. This primary grid being the grid along X and secondary grid being the grid along Y. And these are the intervals. When we come down to an analysis tab, we could make changes as to how we want to make some analysis to a surface. And within the display tab, we can change layers, the color of layers, the line type scale, and the line width. We could also switch off some layers. The triangle when we're using thin, the border, the major contour, the minor contour, and some other components. Here we have the summary. When you're done, you click on OK. Remember that we have two different features down this window. This show tooltip would show us information about an element within the Civil 3D environment when the cursor is placed close to that element. And object locked, it protects the elements from being changed after these must have been checked. The render material here would help us to select a material when we are viewing this surface within the object viewer. I'll change this to sidewalk planting grass thick and click on OK. To visualize how this works, all I have to do is to right click on it and go to object viewer. Then you see the material that we have selected. For a better view, you should select a realistic. You go for a realistic within this tab. Okay. After this stage, we could make some analysis as regards the surface. To do that, I'd come to tool space here, Right click on EGL and select surface properties. I'd come to analysis and make analysis based on elevation. I could create my range. Maybe we would like to have 5 ranges. Starting from the end, the lowest elevation, which is the minimum elevation, 234, and the maximum 238.040. And these ranges would be done automatically. However, you could also type in your a suitable figure that you're comfortable with, maybe at every zero 0.5 meter or at every 1 meter. And you could also select a color to represent this range. After this tab, you could go for statistics. Within the statistics, you have information about the surface, informations like number of points, maximum x coordinates, maximum y coordinates, minimum elevation, and maximum elevation. You could have information about the surface area and the minimum and maximum slope, and also about the triangular irregular network, triangulated irregular network. To have a visual description of this analysis, we'll have to go back to the style, and within display tab, activate or turn on this component, the elevations. You click on OK, you click on OK, you should have this on your screen. I'd go back to surfaces here and switch it off to show just the contours. Thank you.